Hey guys, good to finally be back on YouTube Live tonight. Sorry that I missed you last week. For those of you that don't know, about 30 minutes before we were supposed to go live, YouTube suddenly decided to kill my feed. I had posted a unpublished video or unlisted video like I do every week, testing audio to make sure that everything sounded good. You know, I always try and bring you guys the best possible audio and video presentation that I possibly can. And my little unlisted video that I did, for some reason YouTube didn't like the title of it or whatever, and they went in and banned me from being able to do lives. So I had to appeal it and go through this whole process, and finally got all of that finished up about excuse me, about 4 a.m. Wednesday morning, and got that dialed in. And then it was the middle of the day the next day, middle of the day on Wednesday afternoon, before I was finally able to actually log back into to my YouTube Live and be able to set stuff up again. So that was a whole big ordeal that I hadn't planned on last Tuesday, so I missed you guys. And but it's glad to be back. Definitely glad to be back. Tonight we're going to be talking about natural disaster prep. And this is something that, you know, really no matter where in the country you live right now, you've probably seen some sort of extreme inclement weather in the last week or two. So it's, you know, I'm just really glad to be able to talk about a lot of this tonight and really dig into natural disaster prep and the things that you need to do to really be able to take care of yourself in case of a natural disaster. So we're going to just kind of jump into it. A couple of little things first. We get finished with this video tonight, I'm going to try and roll over to my Patreon and see how everything looks good over on Patreon. We're going to try and do our first video there tonight for all of our Patreon members, and that's going to be the intro to our reloading series that we're going to be starting. So I'm super excited about that. We're going to be doing kind of a high-level introduction, going over a few different things, parts and pieces that you'll need, and just talking about those briefly. Just kind of give everyone a really good introduction into reloading that has. And I'm taking it from a perspective of someone that has never reloaded a single cartridge in their life. You know, you go to the store, you buy your ammo, you take it out of the box, you're like, hey, this goes in my gun, bang, it works, awesome. So that's the perspective that I'm taking it from, is someone that has no experience at all with reloading, no idea what any of the stuff is, any of the tools, and I'm going to walk you through the entire process of how to reload ammunition for both rifles and handguns. So really looking forward to that. It's going to be an awesome series. Let's see, what else do I have here? Some new videos that we're working on right now for our YouTube channel. We've got the one that we're finishing up this week is starter gardening tips and tricks. So for all of you out there that are prepper minded, it doesn't matter if you live in an apartment or if you live in a house or if you have property or a little bitty tiny space of green area where you can grow stuff. We're going to show you how to start all of your vegetables and stuff from seeds in a super easy little almost a little self-contained greenhouse. So we're going to walk you through the whole process with that, and then we'll do a second follow-up video transplanting all of those from the little self-contained greenhouses into the ground, and then probably a third video later on in the summer with all of the stuff that we were able to grow from seed and harvest. So really looking forward to that one. That's going to be a really nice 3-point series that we're going to be doing. So tonight, with natural disasters, what kind of natural disaster can happen in your area where you live? You know, excuse me, a lot of us have seen flash flooding in the last couple of weeks, extreme snowstorms, tornadoes, hurricanes, volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, wildfires, mudslides, avalanches. You know, all of these are things that this time of year that we can see. Maybe not so much with the tsunamis and the hurricanes; those are not really in season right now. But pretty much everything else on the list, there's a potential that you could have seen it in the last couple of weeks. The weather has just been crazy. So I want to talk tonight about what you can do to help protect yourself, the things that you need to make sure you stock up on, what to do if suddenly you can't be at home anymore and you have to leave. So we're going to talk about a lot of that tonight. The weather, here in South Carolina, we've really been blessed, honestly, to be just south of all of this Arctic front that's came in. We can go 25 or 30 miles to the north of us and there's snow on the ground. We can go 45 minutes or an hour north of us and there's a foot and a half of snow on the ground already. And they're supposed to be getting more tonight. So for those of you guys that don't live in the South, that live in the frozen tundra outside of the beautiful South, and you don't get to experience really mild winters like we have here, we are truly blessed that we don't get extreme weather with lots of snow. The downside to it is we don't have the infrastructure in the South to where if we do get even 3-4 inches of snow, we don't have the infrastructure to be able to clear the roads in an expedient manner, and we end up with a lot of accidents because the roads aren't clear and people still try and get out and drive on them, slip and slide, run into each other, run in the ditches and stuff. So those of you that live in states and areas that have good infrastructure that are able to take care of really heavy snowfalls quickly and keep the roads cleared, it's truly a blessing to have that sort of thing in your area. We like I said, we don't have that stuff here, so any snow is really bad when we get it on the roads. I just want to say thank you to Curtis Hunter for joining our fan zone. Thank you, Curtis. So let's talk a little bit about what you need to stock in your home in case of a natural disaster. Some of the items that you need to look at stocking are, number one, food. Food is important, as well as water. We're gonna talk about food first. What types of foods do you need to have in your home in case of a natural disaster? Canned food is a really good one. I'm a huge proponent of canned foods. Canned foods have an almost unlimited shelf life. As long as the cans aren't dented, dents can damage the seal on the inside of them and cause them to rust on the inside. So when you're buying your canned goods, make sure that the cans aren't dented. That'll give you a lot longer shelf life with them. But canned goods, low sodium. I always try and buy my canned goods that are low sodium. If you get the ones that don't specifically say low sodium on them, look at the label and look at the amount of sodium that's in those. We all need a certain amount of sodium in our diets, but most of your canned goods, if you don't buy the low sodium stuff, the sodium count is really high. Non-perishable goods, any of your dried goods, dried beans, dried rice, things that you can buy in bulk, store up, and keep those items put to the side so they don't, you can pull them out, you can take a scoop of it, and 5 years later, you've still got food that you can cook. So non-perishable items are really good. Freeze-dried foods. Freeze-dried foods are the go-to for a lot of people. One of the big reasons why I don't have a lot of freeze-dried foods is because it's not something that I eat on a regular basis. And I always try and store things that I eat on a regular basis. If you don't eat freeze-dried foods and all of a sudden you switch your diet and you start eating freeze-dried foods, it may or may not work really well with your gut system. You may end up in the bathroom a lot, or you may end up really constipated. So that's one thing that you want to, if you're going to be eating a lot of freeze-dried foods, it's something that you do need to introduce into your diet and see how your body reacts to it before you stock up on a bunch of it. MREs are another great one. Kind of run into the same deal with MREs where you can really get you can have some severe constipation if that's all you're eating are MREs. So make sure that if you are eating MREs that you're substituting that out with other foods as well, your non-perishables, your beans, your rice, and then some canned foods also. And then look at items that are long-term shelf stable, things that you can buy that you can store up for a long time. And one of the things that we try and do especially with our canned goods, is the stuff that we buy today goes in the back of the pantry, and the stuff that's in the front, it gets eaten first. So we eat the oldest first, and then the newest goes in the back, so it sets back there and we keep it on a rotation. But like I said, try and buy things that you eat on a regular basis. Your corn, your beans, your stews, even your canned meats, beef stew, things like that. That you can. It's easy to rotate those items out and actually use them in your everyday diet. Water is going to be our next topic. Water is extremely important. We need about a gallon of water a day to be able to live, and that's just our drinking water. That's not including the water that we need for personal hygiene, like washing or flushing your toilets. So if you see that you're going to have some really inclement weather coming up and there's a potential that you could lose your water supply to your house, one of the biggest things that I could recommend is fill up your bathtubs in your house, fill up your sinks in your house. If for no other reason, you've got water to flush your toilets. All right. There's nothing worse than having a toilet 3 days into a snowstorm or ice storm and you've got no water and no way to flush your toilets. So store up your water, fill some large items up, toilets and sinks, bathtubs and stuff like that. That way you've got some extra water to be able to wash yourself and to flush your toilets with. Another thing to consider is having a filter system for your water. You really need to have a way to filter your water. If for some reason the city water, like a lot of us have, your city water gets contaminated, you still need to have a way to be able to filter that water, or you're going to have to boil that water. Boiling is an option, but boiling takes a lot of energy to be able to prep water. You have to boil it for at least 2 minutes to be able to kill everything that's in it and make sure that it's safe to drink. It's a lot easier, a lot more expedient, requires a lot less energy to filter your water than it does to boil it. And there's also some different chemicals that you can put in there. Bleach is one that you can use for purifying water, but you need to make sure you have several different ways to purify your water so you have good drinking water. Good option is buying some bottled water, whether you buy it in the 20-ounce bottles or by the gallon. It's generally quite a bit cheaper if you buy it by the gallon. Store some of those up. It's always good to have a few extra gallons of water on hand. And as long as you keep that water in a cool, dry place, and I like the gallons because it's easy to pick them up and shake them, agitate them, and introduce a little bit of oxygen into the water, and it makes it last a lot longer. But you can really store purified water or distilled water for a long, long time before you ever drink it. One thing to think about is when you go into the store and you buy a bottle of water, you have no idea how long that bottle of water has been sitting on the shelf, and it's still good when you drink it. So, I'm a big fan of bottled water. It lasts a long time. So stock up on some of that as well. Oh, let's see. And then third is a alternative water source. If you can't get water from your well, you can't get water from your tap, you run out of bottled water, where else are you going to get water near you? It's always good to have an alternative water source identified, even if you have to filter that water, boil that water, purify it, whatever, but you still need to have an alternative source to where you can get another water supply. Shelter is huge, especially this time of year when it's in the negatives outside. My friend Semper Gumby up in Tennessee, it was -6 where he lives this morning, and that's only a few hours from us here. -6, I don't care where you live, is cold. We don't normally get weather that cold here. It's supposed to be in the teens, I think, the rest of the week here, which is absolutely brutally cold for South Carolina. We had some weather like that here last year, and we had tons of issues with people with their pipes bursting under their house because people just don't insulate their pipes well enough to be able to prevent them from bursting in extremely cold weather like that. Especially in the South, there might be some thin insulation on them if there's any. But normally it doesn't get cold enough here to cause pipes to burst. But every now and then we get a really long cold spell like we have this week, where it's going to be in the teens all week. And every year we see it with people's pipes bursting. So something to keep an eye on. If you are in a colder area and you have a well, make sure that your well house, you have a heat lamp in there to keep it warm inside your well house. We had to go to our house today and put some heat lamps in there to keep our well warm, and make sure our pipes don't freeze and our well doesn't freeze up tonight and have pipes burst. So just a little tip for you guys. With your shelter, your home is your primary shelter, and you want to make sure that your home is sealed up as well as possible. Any kind of, if you've got some older home, you've got some drafty windows, put some plastic up over your windows on the inside to seal those off and cut down on those drafts. That's really going to help you with your heating bill. That's also really going to help you in case the power goes out, keeping the heat that you have inside your home. Worst case, if you're not able to be in your house and you have to leave, you have to evacuate, a tarp, a tent, your car, anything that you have to keep you warm and to keep you dry. If you get cold, it takes a lot longer to warm back up than it does to stay warm. So anything you can do to keep yourself warm and keep yourself from getting cold and to keep yourself dry. If you don't have to go outside in extremely cold weather, don't go outside. Keep your feet dry, keep your hands dry. There's areas on your body, your nose, your ears, your fingertips, your toes, that when you get really cold, it's very easy for you to get frostbite on those really quickly. So your any exposed area that you have that could potentially get frostbitten, make sure that you protect that, especially your ears, your nose, your fingers, and your toes. Those are very susceptible. Another thing that you need is a way to close off areas of your home. If the power goes out, you've only got a wood stove or whatever that you're heating your house with, kerosene heater, whatever you have that you're using for an alternative heat source, it's going to be more difficult for that single heat source to heat your entire home. So have a way that you can close off certain areas and contain that heat. It's going to require a lot less energy to keep a smaller area warm, and it's a great opportunity to get together with your family and play some board games and stuff, things that you wouldn't normally do because everybody's off doing their own thing. Use it as an opportunity to bring everyone together, play some board games, and have some quality family time with each other with all of the digital devices turned off. Another thing to consider is an alternative power source. If you have electric heat or if you have gas heat, how are you going to heat your home if the power goes out? Do you have a wood stove? Do you have kerosene or oil heaters that you can use? Make sure that you have an alternative power source in case you lose your power. And then food storage for frozen goods. How are you going to keep your frozen goods frozen if the power goes out? That's one of the big things that a lot of people don't consider is, I've got a deep freezer completely full of food, but then the power goes out. If you don't have an alternative power source to keep your freezer frozen, how are you going to keep your goods from going bad? One thing, if you don't have an alternative power source and it's way below zero outside, one thing you can do is take those items out of your freezer and put them outside. If it's under 32 degrees, they're going to stay frozen outside. Just make sure that you either hang them up or put them somewhere in an area where animals can't get to it. Because you get hungry, animals outside are hungry as well. It's harder for animals to find food in the wintertime, and if they can eat yours, it's going to be a lot easier than looking for food in other areas. So if you have to put food outside, make sure that you hang it and you put it inside of something, keep birds out of it, keep squirrels away from it, and then keep your larger animals away from it as well. Alternative fuels. Make sure that you have a stockpile of alternative fuels. We heat with a fireplace a lot in the wintertime, so we have plenty of firewood that I've got split. I spent all day Sunday chopping wood and felt it all day yesterday and today. It's it's one of those things that if you don't do it on a regular basis, you'll have some sore muscles for a few days. But make sure you've got a good alternative fuel supply as well. We have our firewood. We've got bottled propane. I like to store up the 20-pound bottles of propane. They're very shelf stable and they're easy to cook on with the grill or with the griddle or whatever. Natural gas, solar, those are a couple of other options as well. But make sure that you have an alternative fuel supply and you have enough of it to survive. I like to keep enough alternative fuels for at least a week. If I'm having to heat, if I'm having to cook, everything like that, I want enough alternative fuel supplies to be able to stay comfortable for at least a week. and I've got a lot more than that. We've got enough wood chopped and enough propane probably to last us for 6 months at least, with cooking and heating with it every day. But make sure that, yeah, we used to didn't have that, but it's something that over time that we've built up. But even if you have no alternative fuel supplies, no alternative heating methods, put that in your plan that you're going to start with one, and you're going to start adding to it a little bit at a time. Don't try and do everything all at once. Get a little bit and then build from there. A little something is a whole lot better than a lot of nothing. So start adding to it and start building up from there. Now let's talk about something that I think a lot of people don't consider. Car supplies. What are things that you need in your vehicle? Well, one of the first things is an evac plan. We've got a natural disaster. Things have went south in your area, whether it's flooding, whether it's snow, hurricane, whatever. But for some reason, you're having to leave your home and go somewhere else. Do you have an evac plan, an evacuation plan? Do you know where you're going to go if something happens? We live pretty close to we live within a few hours of the coast, so they have hurricanes. Almost every year we have a hurricane. There's some evacuations from the coast, and those people move inland, they move north, away from the hurricanes. Here where we live, we're on one of the largest fault zones in the United States. We have a lot of small earthquakes here. Some of them you can feel, some of them are small enough that you don't even feel them, you don't even notice them. But we have a lot of earthquakes here. We also have several nuclear power plants pretty near us. And if something happens to one of those plants and we have to evacuate, we've got to have a place to go. And we have to have, one of the big things is knowing where you're going. If you have to leave your home, you don't want to jump in your car and just take off and drive for the sake of wasting gas. You need to have a plan, and you need to know where you're going ahead of time. The big things with knowing where you're going is having alternative routes. If you have to evacuate, where are you gonna go, and how are you gonna get there if your primary route is blocked? It's always good to have alternative routes, and I like to have at least 3 alternative routes if I'm going somewhere, and a map showing how to get there using each of those alternative routes. Another thing with your car is to make sure that you have plenty of gas in it. Don't let your gas tank run down to where you're at 20 miles before you fill up. Keep your gas tank topped off. It's a lot cheaper when you're filling up a gas tank that's half full versus a gas tank that's empty. So it doesn't seem to hurt the wallet as much when you fill up at a half a tank instead of an empty tank. But keep your tank topped off, especially this time of year. For some reason you have to leave, you've got plenty of fuel in your vehicle. Another big thing is to make sure that you change your oil regularly in your vehicle. I was talking with a friend of mine earlier today. He's a gunsmith as well and worked with me for a long time. And we were laughing about 22s. And he was like, it seems like here lately that's all that I work on are 22s. It's like people bring them in to me, they're broken, whatever, won't run. And I go in and do my thing to them, take them, test fire them, and customer comes and picks them up and then brings it back a couple of days later and says, there's something wrong with my 22, it won't shoot again. It's like, so I take it out to the range with them and load it up, empty a magazine, give it back to them. And first thing that I tell them is you have to run good ammunition in your 22. And for me and him as well, CCI standard velocity or CCI mini mags are some of our favorites. It's just very good, consistent ammunition. So we were talking about that. I was like, I said 22 ammunition is almost like going to your mechanic and telling him to put somebody else's used oil in their used oil filter in your car if you're going to use something other than or some kind of cheap 22 ammunition. It's probably going to work when you put that used oil in your car, but eventually it's going to break and your vehicle is going to quit running because of the used oil. I'm like, you've got to use good ammunition. Got to use good ammunition. So if you've got some stuff that runs good in your gun that's not CCI, that's awesome. But just know that a lot of the brands that are out there don't have the reliability that you get with CCI ammunition. Channel's not sponsored by them or anything. It's just an experience that I've had over the years using a lot of different brands of 22 ammunition. CCI is some of the best. Another big one is check your radiator. Top off your radiator with antifreeze, top off your overflow with antifreeze, and make sure that your antifreeze levels are good, especially in extreme cold temperatures. You know, the worst thing that you could have happen is go out to get in your car and the block's cracked because the water in your radiator has frozen. All right, and it is a possibility it can happen. So make sure you top off your antifreeze, make sure you top off the all of your coolants in your vehicle, as well as checking your brake fluid, transmission fluid, and things like that. Stay on top of your service with your vehicle so it's ready to go if you need it. Check the air pressure in your tires. The air pressure in the tires is a big thing, especially in inclement weather. You know, a lot of times if you get a lot of snow on the road, you get a lot of ice on the road, I'll let the air out of my tires some and deflate them down to about 18 pounds or so. That lower air pressure gives you a larger contact footprint on the road and gives you better traction. A lot of people don't realize that. It's the same thing if you're off-roading, if you're going out in some mud and things like that. You can deflate the tires some, it increases the footprint and gives you better traction. So it's something to consider. But if you do let the air out of your tires to get better traction, when the road conditions improve, don't forget to air your tires back up. Snow chains. Snow chains are one of the big things that if you live in an area where you have a lot of snow, and apparently most of the country except the sunny south has gotten a lot of snow this week, make sure you have snow chains. Make sure you know how to install them on your vehicle. Make sure they fit your vehicle. Snow chains work, and they work really, really well. One of the worst things you can do is have a brand new box of snow chains in the back of your vehicle and no idea how to install them. So if you've got snow chains, make sure that you put them on your vehicle, test them, make sure they fit, make sure that you know how to install them and install them correctly. Check the tread on your tires. That's a big one. We get in our vehicles, we drive them all day, we drive them every day, but generally until something happens with a tire, a lot of people don't check it. So check the treads on your tires, especially your front tires. If you haven't had your vehicle lined up recently, take it and have it lined up. An alignment on your vehicle helps the tires wear evenly, and it's one of the worst things you could see is your tires are out of alignment and all of a sudden the inside edge of the tire has worn all the way down to the steel belts and it pops on you. And that's one of the areas that you don't see unless you crank the wheels all the way to the right or all the way to the left. You never see the inside edge of your tire. So that's one thing that I always recommend when you're checking your tires. You want to check them on the top, you want to check them on the areas where you can see, but turn your steering wheel all the way to the left and then all the way to the right, and go back and check your tires again on the inside edges as well, especially on the front, and make sure that your tires are wearing evenly. All right, guys, I'm going to jump over here and we're going to look at a few questions for some guys and say hello to some people, and then we'll jump back into our content tonight. Jim Griner says audio is loud and clear. Thank you, bud. I appreciate it. We swapped out mics this week. We've got a new upgraded microphone. I've been working feverishly getting it set up like it's supposed to be so you guys could have great audio tonight. Sipper Gumby says, good evening from cold Tennessee. Glad you're up and running, Robbie. Your Hawaiian was very well with Such. I appreciate it, bud. And for those of you guys that missed it today, the Sensible Prepper Live from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock Eastern Standard, we were talking about Mark Zuckerberg and his new underground bunker that he's building, and just kind of dug into that a little bit. So if you missed that, make sure you jump over to the Sensible Prepper channel and check out the live from earlier today. It was a really good one. DB from South Florida checking in. JD Prepping Erie, only 1 inch of snow, but the air temperature is 8 degrees right now with 22 mile per hour wind. Guys, that is cold. That is cold. And that's the kind of cold that you can get hypothermic really quickly or frostbite really quickly if you're not dressed appropriately. Russ Michael says, good evening from freezing Pennsylvania. DB says, no snow here, 80 degrees today. That's a little warm. That's a little warm for January. I am a fair weather person. I like somewhere between 45 and 68 degrees is like the ideal outdoor temperature for me. It's a great temperature for going hiking and splitting wood or doing anything outside, any kind of outdoor activities. but that's kind of the ideal range for me. When it gets colder than that, I can always put more clothes on. When it gets hotter than that, I can't take enough off. It gets embarrassing for everybody. It's terrible. Curtis Hunter says anything south of Interstate 30, the good Lord puts it on the road and he has to take it off. Yeah, that's exactly right. DB says, I like turtles. Okay. Turtles are cool. Gerald Montanona, I bug you with wanting to do a review on the Stealth Arms Platypus 2011. Have you had a chance to take a look at the Budget 2011, the Apollo 11? Perhaps do a comparison review with them both. You know, I was actually playing with one of the new Gerson 2011s today, and it was pretty impressive. I think the MSRP price point on those is about $900, so it's about $400 or so less than the Springfield Prodigy. I still want to do some more research on it, on the Gerson. The grip felt really nice. It kind of reminded me of the excuse me. It kind of reminded me of the original STI 2011 grip. Just the entire design of it. It was really reminiscent of the old STI 2011 grips. So it felt really good in my hand. It was very familiar to me. Wasn't a huge fan of the trigger and the way the trigger and everything was set up in the gun. The trigger pull weight, it was kind of heavy. But you know, with a 1911 or a 2011, that's a easy fix. There's great parts out there if you want to do replacement parts, or you may be able to tune on those a little bit and get a lighter trigger with it. The slide to frame fit was really nice. The barrel seemed to be fitted really well. I didn't have a chance to take it apart and really dig into it to look at the upper lugs and the standing lugs on the barrel to see how they were fitted, to look at the link and make sure they had the right link in it, and to check the lockup with the upper lugs to the slide and make sure they had the correct lockup engagement on top. But overall, just just 5 minutes or so playing with it, the gun really felt well in my hand and could be a great platform to buy, knowing that you're going to have to do a little bit of upgrading to it. But you know, if you can start off with a $900 base gun and spend a few $100 upgrading some things like a hammer, a sear, disconnector, maybe an extractor, not sure yet. Like I said, I haven't got to shoot it, so I don't know where it's at reliability wise. But you know, a few parts and you could have a really nice gun that would be on par with like a Staccato or something like that. The overall fit and finish, the finish of the gun looked really nice. It looked like it had a blued finish on it, so no kind of Cerakote or anything like that. With a hard use gun, Cerakote is awesome. I think it is a really good finish. I love it on shotguns, especially stuff that's gonna see a lot of weather, duck guns, things like that. That's really, it's gonna get wet, it's gonna stay wet, and with almost any finish, those guns can rust. Cerakote does a great job protecting them and preventing rust on the metal because the surfaces are covered with a ceramic coating. The downside to Cerakote is, especially on a handgun, going in and out of Kydex holsters and things like that, is it wears. Your high points, your hard edges and stuff, it will wear very quickly, and you'll end up with a spot on a gun that has bare metal showing. I've had some Prodigies that, one range session, and I had already worn through the Cerakote down to the bare metal. So on some guns, shotguns, some of your rifles, bolt actions, things like that, I'm a big fan of Cerakote. But on handguns that are going in and out of a holster a lot, it's not the finish that I prefer. I'd much prefer something like a nitrided or a DLC finish that does a much better job of protecting the metal and the surface metal for a long time. Citaspel says 5 fingers of death. Not sure what that means, but hey, yep. JD Prepping Erie, hit that thumbs up button. Hey, there you go. That's a great idea for everybody that's out there. Drop down to the bottom and hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you subscribe. And he says, if you're going to let your faucet drip, put a bucket under it and save the water for your pets or watering plants. Absolutely right. That's a great point. In the wintertime when it gets really cold, you crack your faucets just a little bit and let the water drip, and that way the pipes don't freeze up. Uh, if you don't do anything with that water and just let it run down the drain, you're wasting that water. You can let them drip and let it drip into a bucket. You can use that water for some reason. You can use it to flush your toilets. You can water your pets. There's a lot of uses for that water. If you're letting it drip into clean pots, clean pans, you can still use that water to drink as well. So if you're dripping into a clean container, you can bottle it. There's a lot of uses for that. But JD Prepping Erie, that's a great tip about leaving your faucets on, letting your faucets drip, especially in this cold weather, so your pipes don't freeze up. Vision Preparedness said 13 in Ohio. That's cold. John Richardson from Maine. John, good to see you, bud. Glad you're here tonight. He's checking in with us. Mr. Landfill says, if you must leave your home after losing power, turn the water off, open and leave, open all the faucets and flush your toilets too. Mr. Landfill, you're absolutely right. If for some reason you do have to leave your home, and this is one of the things we were talking about earlier today, is how to winterize your pipes if you have to leave your home. And say you're not leaving your home, say you've got a bug out location. That's one of those things that's probably on the majority of our bucket list. We want a bug out location, some place that we can go if we can't stay at our homes anymore. But your bug out location, you're not there all the time, right? Well, this kind of cold weather like this, your pipes could burst. You could run into a lot of issues there. So some of the things we were talking about today with your bug out location is making sure that you turn off all the water going into your house, into your bug out location. Drain all of your pipes. Excuse me. And then after you drain all of your pipes, flush all of your toilets and get all the water out of the tank on the toilet. And then you go to the store and you get RV winterizing antifreeze, and you pour that into your toilet tanks. You pour that into your sinks. You fill up your P-traps with it under your sink. You fill up your toilet bowl water to where it's at a normal level. And what that winterizing antifreeze does is it prevents your P-traps and all of your pipes inside your home from freezing and bursting. Inside your well house, you put a heat lamp in there. We turn our well off if we're not using it, and then that way there's not water stored inside the well, but we still run a heat lamp in there because of the tank. I don't want my tank to lose pressure and have to reprime the pump. So we keep a heat lamp in there to keep the inside of our well house above freezing, and that way you don't have to worry about pump issues or pipes bursting inside your well house. Character Matters says board games. Hey, board games are awesome. That's one of the things that we try and do pretty regularly in our house. My wife and my boys and I, we sat down this past weekend and played a game of Team Monopoly, and it's the first time we played Monopoly in a while. But I absolutely love Monopoly. It's probably one of my favorite board games ever. But we had a great time just sitting around talking and maybe talking a little bit of trash to one another while we were playing the board games and stuff. But it was awesome. Mr. Landfill says protect from birds too. Yep, absolutely right. And he's talking about earlier, if you have to put food outside to keep it frozen, make sure you protect it from birds. Curtis Hunter says, I recommend some propane heaters that don't use electricity. Propane heaters are a great alternative source, propane or natural gas. One of the things you want to make sure of with any type of gas heat is that it's vented or non-vented. So basically it's whether you can use it indoors or whether you can't use it outdoors. Same way with like your gas logs and different things like that. A lot of guys are big fans of the Heater Buddy. The Heater Buddy is one of those that uses 1 pound propane bottles, or it's got a longer hose that hooks to it. It's indoor safe, so you can use the Heater Buddy inside your house to heat your the inside of your home. But that is it's a great tool. It's a great alternative heat source to have on hand, and they're not crazy expensive right now. So that's one that I would highly recommend. Curtis, thank you for bringing that up. Chris Matthews said bear bag method is good. Learned that in the Boy Scouts. You're absolutely right. Chris, the bear bag method is you take your food, your frozen goods, whatever, any of your food that you're putting outside to keep frozen, you put it in a bag, you throw a rope over a limb, and you raise your food up where it's out of reach of predators, and that keeps your food from being able to be consumed by animals. Semper Gumby says, for inclement weather, like our snowstorm, I make sure my power stations and lithium batteries are full and charged up. This is a great alternative to gas generators. Absolutely. Battery power stations are a great alternative. They last a long time and provide you with power that you may not have. Electric or gas generators are awesome. I've had one for, I don't know, 30 years. I've had several for 30 years plus, and they work great. The downside is your gas generators, larger gas generators, they use a lot of fuel. I think ours that we use, it runs about 6 gallons for every 24 hours, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 6 gallons at 24 hours, and that's not pulling a ton of power off of it. If I start plugging in 4, 6, 8 110 outlets on it, and then plug in a couple of 220 outlets to run my freezers, run my stove, whatever, it's going to really suck that fuel down really quickly, because you're putting more of a load on the engine, and the engine has to use more fuel to be able to run and keep up with everything. So if you're going to use a gas generator, make sure you have plenty of fuel on hand to be able to keep that generator running. Otherwise, the power stations and the lithium batteries are a great alternative. Mr. Landfill says, flat shovel, salt or sand, warm blanket, boots, gloves, keep your tank full. Absolutely. Semper Gumby says, I have a diesel heater, very efficient, and runs off my lithium batteries. Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Have you got a review on that up on your channel? And guys, if you haven't checked him out, Semper Gumby has a outstanding outdoors channel. So make sure you go over there and check out his YouTube channel as well. Mr. Landfill says, true, I never forget the paper map. Yep, paper maps are awesome. What I normally do with my paper maps is I take them and laminate those maps, because they stay rolled up, folded up in my bag, and the paper can end up tearing. And there's nothing worse than trying to put seams together on a torn map. So I always laminate all of my paper maps before I put them in my bag. Citispill, I just did a preparedness video for truckers. Never really see anyone addressing them. I recommended Trucker Atlas. More details than the average map or atlas. That's right. And a lot of times you can pick up those trucker atlases at any of your truck stops off the side of the interstate. And that is a great place to pick up one of the trucker atlases. And those things, they have so much detail that you don't see with your regular atlases or even maps. Hunting and Stuff with J&J says, hey Robbie, good to have you on tonight, bud. Citispell, Zuck's Bunker, foreman called, asked when you can start. I'm putting in for the security position. It's a joke. Citispell, Robbie, personal preference, wireless mic. Wireless mic for, be a little more elaborate on what you're asking for there, bud, and I can go into some detail on that. John G says, Robbie, I offered the Apollo 11 to Don for review. I'll make the same offer to you. John, I'll give you a call tomorrow, and I'll get that from you, and we'll go ahead and do a review on that. I appreciate it, bud. 2AEDU says, hey. Skeeter's Buzz, hey John G. Citispell, what we called the sausage-shaped meat in our MREs, 5 fingers of death. Oh, I got you, bud. I got you. That was one that I would always try and trade off to someone else. Chris Matthews, make sure you keep small motors topped off with fuel and cranked regularly. Chainsaws are notorious for not being able to crank in the winter, and they're a big help when needed. You're absolutely right, Chris. You know, I pulled my chainsaw out. It's probably been 6 months since I used it this past Sunday to cut some wood, and it was a little cranky. It gave me some headaches trying to start it. So, but yes, you're absolutely right. Start your small engines regularly, and if you're putting regular ethanol gas in them, make sure that you're putting a fuel stabilizer in those as well, so your fuel doesn't go bad. And there's nothing worse than trying to start a 4-cycle engine that's been sitting for a year and a half, and the fuel has turned to jelly inside the engine and ruins your carburetor, ruins your fuel tank. Make sure you use some fuel stabilizer. John G says, at 2A EDU, will we see you at the gathering in March? Hey, that's a good question. I will definitely be there, and looking forward to seeing a lot of you guys at the gathering as well. Whiskey Prepper, good evening from a cold and windy Virginia. Yes it is. Curtis Hunter, yes, must have an oxygen depletion unit on the M. 2A, John, yes, I plan on going both days. I hope to see some of you and Robbie there again. Yep, we'll definitely be there, bud. And all right, let's jump back over here into our topics for tonight. Next thing is we're done with vehicles. Let's talk about our get home bag, and that's a bag that all of us should have in our vehicle. If we have to leave or we're out somewhere, we get caught in inclement weather, what are some things that we need to have in our vehicle, that we need to have in our get home bag to make sure that we can make it home safely? One of the big things first is the bag itself. You want to have a bag that is comfortable to wear with some weight in it. Padded straps, padded back, waist support, anything that you can have with a backpack that's going to improve the comfort of that bag when you're carrying it for miles and miles. That was one of the things when I was in the Marine Corps. You'd have an 80-pound pack was not unheard of at all. And when you put 80 pounds on your back, that weight bearing down on your shoulders, if you didn't have a good pack frame to help support that backpack and spread that load out over your back, you would be in a bad way really quickly. So normally I tell guys, if you're over about 25 or 30 pounds with your backpack, you need to have that pack on a frame and be able to spread that load out over your entire back. Under 25 or 30 pounds, you can get away with not having, with just a padded back on your backpack and some padded shoulder straps. But if you get over about 25 or 30 pounds, you really need a pack frame to spread that weight out. So make sure you get a good, comfortable pack. Make sure that pack has some really good reviews or really good ratings on it. Make sure that it has good zippers. There's nothing worse than a zipper failing on a backpack when you need it. So I'm a big fan of the YKK zippers. I really won't buy a backpack unless it has YKK zippers on them. They just seem to be the gold standard. They work very well, and I've had backpacks that the seams on the pack have worn out and started splitting before the zipper ever went bad on it. Socks are one of the biggest things that you need in your backpack. Wet feet will cause blisters, and blisters will put you down. You can't walk with blisters on your feet. You can, but it is extremely painful. So having good socks and having extra socks in your pack that you can swap out on your feet, keep your feet dry. Make sure you have extra socks in there. A blanket or a whoopee is one of the things that a lot of people don't consider. And I like blankets that shed water. So whether that's a fleece blanket or a whoopee, which is also a poncho liner, which is waterproof as well. Anything that will help keep water off of you and help keep you dry. The fleece blankets, they can get wet, but even if a fleece blanket gets wet, you can shake it, pop it one time, and almost all the moisture will come out of that blanket, and you can put it back on you and stay warm. So those are a couple of different types of blankets that I recommend. A good flashlight, and make sure that it has lithium batteries in it. I don't like to keep AA batteries or anything like that, regular alkaline batteries in my get home bag, simply because I don't go in my get home bag a whole lot, and the worst thing that you could have happen is need your get home bag, need your flashlight, and the batteries have corroded and ruined the flashlight in there. So I like to use lithium batteries. They have a lot longer shelf life. They last a lot longer in your light, and preferably use some that are rechargeable. That way you can recharge that flashlight on the go. Next thing, going along with rechargeable batteries, is a USB power block that you can keep in your pack with extra cords that fit everything, so you can charge your phone, you can charge your flashlights, and anything else that you need that requires power. one of the things you do want to do is make sure you keep your USB power block charged up. I don't normally keep my power block in my backpack itself. I've got a separate cord that's plugged up to that into a USB in my car, so anytime I'm driving, it's charging that USB power block, and it keeps it fully charged if I ever need it. Compass, map, food and water. Those are 4 quickies that we really need to make sure that we keep in our pack. If you've never used a compass, one of the biggest things that I could tell you is get that compass out, get a map out, and watch some YouTube videos. There's tons of great videos out there from guys that show you how to use a compass and use it properly. But learn how to use a compass, learn how to shoot an azimuth with a compass, and learn how to relate that compass to your map, to the terrain that you're at, so you can navigate properly. It's actually something that's pretty fun to do. If you get out in the backcountry a little bit, get out in the woods some with your compass and your map, and navigate to different locations just using the map and the compass, and then use it to navigate back to where you started. It's a great way to spend a good afternoon. Food and water, obviously, are things that we have to have. And depending on where you are and what you're doing, the further away from home you get, the more items you need in your get home bag. The closer to home you are, you may not need any food in your bag, but you're still probably going to want to have some water. Fire starting kit, lighters, waterproof matches, tinder, and not where you meet girls. The tinder like you use for starting fires. Ammunition and magazines. It's always good to have a little bit of spare ammunition, some spare magazines in your bag. Good pair of hiking shoes or hiking boots are essential. If you're at work, you work in an office, you wear a suit and tie every day, your shoes that you wear to work, they're probably super comfortable to wear at work, but they're not going to be super comfortable to walk 20 or 25 miles in if for some reason your car breaks down, SHTF, whatever, and you're not able to get home. Have a spare pair of shoes in your car that are super comfortable, that give you some ankle support, that if you have to walk, you've got good shoes to walk in. This time of year, obviously, a beanie, jacket, gloves, and one thing that a lot of people overlook are hand warmers. Hand warmers are a great heat source if for some reason you don't have enough warm clothes to put on to stay warm. You can bust open some hand warmers, put one under your beanie, put a couple of them in your jacket pockets where your hands are going, your pants pockets where your hands are going. Hand warmers are awesome for keeping you warm. So I always try and keep a big bag of those in my get home bag, especially this time of year. And then to go along with our get home bag is our EDC, items that we carry every single day. First thing is our concealed weapon. What type of concealed weapon do you have? Do you keep it clean? Are you servicing it? Are you, do you perform any maintenance on it? Do you shoot it regularly so you know that the gun's still running and working like it's supposed to? One of the worst things that I see are guys that'll bring me a gun and say, there's something wrong with my gun. I went to the range to shoot it today and it won't work. And as soon as I disassemble the firearm and pull it apart, it's packed full of 10 years or more of lint and dust. You know this gun hasn't been shot in forever. They take it out one time and try and shoot it and it won't run because it's been neglected. Don't neglect your concealed weapon. All right, take care of it, clean it, service it, shoot it regularly. What type of holster do you have? Do you have a good, comfortable holster? Anyone that's carried for an extended period of time knows that a pistol on your belt starts getting heavy. And you'll feel that weight. Even a 2 or 3 pound pistol on your hip, you'll start feeling that weight. So having a really good holster as well as a really rigid belt to help spread that load out on your waist, absolutely imperative. Even if you're wearing dress pants, there's really nice dress belts that you can wear, but make sure you get a good rigid belt to go with your holster to spread the load out on your hips. Your knife. Make sure that your knife stays sharp. Make sure that it stays oiled. Make sure it doesn't get a whole lot of rust on it or any rust on it. But keep your knife clean. Maintain your knife. Keep a good sharp edge on it. I always tell people a dull knife cuts more people than a sharp knife ever had a chance to, because you're prying and you're trying to force something, and whatever you're trying to cut, that dull knife just doesn't want to cut it. A sharp knife cuts very easily. It cuts very smoothly. It requires a lot less energy. Keep your knife sharp. Stay on top of your edge maintenance. Spare magazines, spare ammunition. Once again, just like with your backpack, rotate it out regularly. Your carry ammunition, if I see guys all the time, they cycle, they chamber and unchamber one round, and they put that same round back on top of their magazine. Next day they chamber that round, and over time, chambering and unchambering that round, it actually shortens the round and pushes the projectile back into the case. As you push the projectile back into the case, you decrease case capacity and increase case pressure. You can end up blowing a case up, blowing your gun up. So rotate your carry ammunition out pretty regularly. If you take the round out of the chamber, put that round in the bottom of the magazine, and a fresh round goes in the chamber. And after you rotate through those, always mark the one in the first round that goes to the bottom. And after I cycle through those about 3 times, I get 3 Sharpie marks on it, then I shoot that ammunition and replace it with new ammunition. Your flashlight that you carry, if you don't carry a flashlight in your pocket, you probably should. That is one of the things that I didn't do for years, and I couldn't tell you how many times I'm like, hey, you got a light? I need a light. Does anybody have a light? I carry a flashlight everywhere I go now. If I've got my pants on, I've got a flashlight in my pocket, and I use it every single day. A couple of things that a lot of people don't think about carrying are cash. Make sure you have some cash on you. In a get-home situation, ATMs may be down, and you may have to have cash to be able to pay for things. So make sure you have some cash, and make sure you have your wallet on you. All right. I don't normally carry my cash in my wallet. I keep inside of my phone in the very back here. I keep $100 back there. I call it my phone hundo. And in case of an emergency, I've got money in the back of my wallet that I can dig into anytime that I need it. So that's about it for tonight, guys. I'm gonna jump over here and we'll go through a few more questions, and then we will sign off. And once again, I'm going to try and bounce over to Patreon, and we're going to try and do a intro live over there tonight for our reloading video series that we're going to be starting. So as soon as I finish up here, I'm going to reset some stuff, and we'll be over on the Patreon channel for all of our members over there. Let's try and get to a few questions right quick before we jump off. Let's see. Gerald Montanona says, have heavy-duty contractor trash bags in your vehicle. Absolutely. Trash bags are a great tool to have in your vehicle, whether you're changing the tire on the side of the road and need to put something down to keep mud and water off of you, to using it for a poncho. Heavy-duty, heavy metal trash bags have almost unlimited uses in the vehicle. Robert Van Dyke says, I charge up car marine batteries and then use them with a cheap inverter for his CPAP. That's a great idea. Keeping some spare batteries on hand and using them for your inverter to power your CPAP or power anything else that you need to power. Generally, your inverters don't pull a ton of power, and 12 volt, especially marine batteries or a lot of your deep cell batteries, will last a long time on an inverter. So that's a great tip. John Richardson says a small tarp and some paracord, it weighs nothing and can be very useful. Absolutely. That's some great things to have in your vehicle as well, especially the further from home you get. If you're at a point where you're going to end up having to spend the night outdoors, that tarp and some 550 cord can instantly become a tent that you can sleep in. Porky Prepper says, bought a cheap power block, huge mistake, buy a good one, not a Big Lots one. Porky Prepper, you're absolutely right. I've been using the same power block for over 10 years, and not an exaggeration. I bought it off of Amazon on a whim and decided to try it, and it has been absolutely tremendous. Everybody in the house has one now, and we keep them in the cars, we keep them charged up, but it works very well. I will post a link to it over in the description when I get finished up tonight. Citispell says, pack some moleskin. Yep. Moleskin is used to help prevent blisters. It's a very slick material with a adhesive backing. Excuse me. You can put it inside your boots, inside your shoes, and stick it in where it'll stay in place, and it does a great job helping prevent blisters. Curtis Hunter says, I also recommend snare material. Yep, and snare material, that's again one of those things that if you're getting further and further away from home, you're going to want to add that to your get home bag. And maybe we'll do an entire video on what to do or what to have in your get home bag, from your your day-to-day travels to traveling to see relatives or going out of state or several states out, things that you need to have in your vehicle. Joe Montanona says, remember, if you use a map and compass, ensure that you know your area's GM angle listed on the map. Absolutely, absolutely. Robert Van Dyke says, random question, what is the best pocket pistol? I've got a Glock 26, but it pokes out of my pocket a bit too much. It really depends. My pocket pistol, I carry a North American Arms 22 Magnum little micro revolver a lot of times. If I don't want to carry something that anyone will see or anyone will know that I'm carrying, that's my go-to. It's and it has been my go-to for years and years. Curtis Hunter says, a 5-month-old red healer border collie mix could be a natural disaster. No, sir, that's a man-made disaster. But you are absolutely right. Those are labs, especially when they're younger, until they get about 2 years old, they are notorious for getting into stuff. And that's about it for tonight, guys. I want to say thank you to everyone for all of the questions and for watching us, joining us for our live tonight. It's been a great time, and guys.